AITA for refusing to take my daughter to her birthday party. I am a 33-year-old mother of two wonderful kids, my daughter Cleo, who is 5 years old, and my son, who is 8. Cleo has always been a little firecracker, filled with curiosity and creativity. Ever since she was about 3 years old, she has made it very clear that she absolutely dislikes the color pink. It is not just a passing phase or a mild preference. Cleo has consistently expressed her distaste for pink. She dislikes pink clothes, pink toys, pink anything. The only exceptions are a pink shirt she picked out herself and a pink stuffed animal she cherishes, which tells me that when Cleo likes something, she decides it for herself. That's just who she is. She knows what she likes and what she doesn't, and I respect that about her. Enter my father's partner, Prue. Prue has been in my father's life for several years now. She's polite on the surface, but she has a habit of disregarding boundaries, particularly when it comes to my kids. For some reason, Prue has latched onto the idea that Cleo's dislike for pink is something she can fix. Over the years, every single gift she has ever given Cleo has been some shade of pink, pink dresses, pink toys, pink accessories, even a pink tea set once. I have repeatedly told her to stop. I have explained, kindly at first and then firmly, that Cleo does not like pink and that it upsets her to receive things she does not enjoy. But no matter how many conversations we have had about it, Prue insists that Cleo just needs to try different shades of pink or that I need to encourage her to embrace her feminine side. It has been a constant battle, and quite frankly, I am exhausted by it. About a week ago, my father invited my husband, the kids, and me over for dinner at his house. He said he and Prue had planned a surprise for the kids. I thought it was a little odd since there was no particular occasion, but I chalked it up to them just wanting to spend time with the kids. Cleo was excited because she loved spending time with her grandpa, and my son was looking forward to seeing everyone, too. Right before we left the house, my younger sister, who still lives with my father, sent me a text. She told me I needed to know about the surprise before we arrived. According to her, the surprise was actually a birthday party that Prue had planned for Cleo. This immediately confused me because Cleo's birthday is in November, and we had already celebrated it months ago. My father was unable to attend her actual birthday party because of work, but he called her to wish her a happy birthday, and I thought that was the end of it. What made it even stranger was that my son's birthday is coming up in March, so I assumed that if anyone was getting a party, it would be him. The whole thing felt off, and I asked my sister to tell me more. She followed up by sending me photos of the decorations. When I tell you the entire house was a sea of pink, I am not exaggerating. Every single piece of decor was pink. The table was covered in a pink tablecloth, the tableware was pink, the balloons were pink, and Prue had even glued pink foil fringe curtains on the doors. There were pink banners everywhere, and the cake itself was entirely pink with pink frosting and pink sprinkles. It looked like something out of a Barbie commercial. My sister told me that Prue had gone all out and seemed incredibly proud of what she had done, but she also warned me that it might not go over well with Cleo. I showed the photos to my husband, and we were both stunned. It was abundantly clear that this party was not planned with Cleo in mind. It felt like yet another attempt by Prue to force pink onto her, completely disregarding Cleo's feelings. My husband and I talked it over, and we decided that we would not be taking the kids to the party. We did not want Cleo to feel ambushed or uncomfortable, and we did not want to reward Prue's pattern of ignoring boundaries. Instead, we came up with a plan to take the kids to McDonald's and frame it as the surprise. Both of our kids love McDonald's, so we knew they would be happy with that. I texted my father to let him know. I wrote, "Hey, sister, told me everything. We're not coming. We're taking the kids to McDonald's and telling them that was your surprise. You and Prue can come if you want, we're paying." I tried to keep the tone neutral, but I wanted to make it clear that we were not going to participate in something that would upset Cleo. We took the kids to McDonald's as planned, and they had a great time. My father did show up, but he came without Prue. He was cold and distant with us, and he left after about 20 minutes. Later, both he and Prue texted me, furious about what had happened. My father said that we had dismissed Prue's heartfelt gesture and made her feel unappreciated. Prue went a step further and accused me of being the reason Cleo is so restrictive. She claimed that my own dislike for Pink is rubbing off on Cleo and that I am raising her to be an ungrateful, spoiled child who refuses to compromise. To be honest, I can see how some people might think I overreacted, but I stand by my decision. Prue has a history of disregarding Cleo's feelings, and this party felt like another instance of her trying to impose her own preferences onto my daughter. Cleo is a person with her own likes and dislikes, and it is my job as her mother to respect that and ensure others do the same. My sister and one of my brothers agree with me, although my sister did mention that my text to my father came across as rude. My other brother is undecided. I cannot shake the feeling that this whole situation was avoidable if Prue had just listened to us from the beginning. Am I the one in the wrong here? Or was I justified in protecting Cleo from a situation that would have clearly made her uncomfortable? Update 1. Things have been tense, to say the least, since the McDonald's incident. The next day, my father called me to talk things through. For a moment, I felt a glimmer of hope that he might actually listen to me and try to understand where I was coming from. Maybe he'd reflect on how this situation unfolded and realize how Prue had crossed a line, not just this time, but repeatedly. But nope. Instead, the conversation turned into a frustrating spiral of him defending Prue and doubling down on how I had overreacted and hurt her feelings. He started off by saying that Prue had worked hard to plan the party and had genuinely been excited to surprise Cleo. He described her as heartbroken over how things turned out and accused me of throwing her gesture back in her face. I tried, yet again, to explain that this wasn't about the effort she put in, but about how she keeps ignoring Cleo's feelings. I reminded him that I had told Prue multiple times that Cleo doesn't like Pink, and I pointed out how upsetting it would have been for Cleo to walk into a party that was essentially the opposite of everything she enjoys. But my father brushed it off, saying that Cleo is just a kid and doesn't really know what she wants yet. That statement hit a nerve. It's one thing for Prue to dismiss Cleo's preferences, but hearing my own father say it was infuriating. I stayed calm, though, and asked him why he thought it was okay to disregard Cleo's feelings just because she's young. He didn't have a good answer, so he shifted gears and brought up the fact that Cleo does have two Pink items she likes, the shirt and the stuffed animal. He used this as proof that Cleo doesn't really hate Pink as much as I claim and suggested that I might be exaggerating or projecting my own dislike for Pink onto her. That accusation was the final straw for me. I told him I was done discussing the issue and ended the call before I said something I'd regret. Later that day, Prue decided to throw her own fuel onto the fire by sending me a long, patronizing text. In it, she explained that her intention with the party was to nurture Cleo's femininity because, in her words, I'm depriving her of it. She claimed that I was steering Cleo away from traditional femininity and depriving her of the chance to embrace who she is as a girl. Reading that message made my blood boil. How dare she assume that Cleo's dislike of Pink has anything to do with her femininity? Cleo is a vibrant, confident, and happy little girl who knows exactly who she is. She doesn't need Pink or sparkles or tutus to feel like a girl, and she certainly doesn't need someone like Prue trying to box her into a stereotype. I showed the text to my husband, and he was just as furious as I was. He wanted to call my dad right then and there to tell him off, but I convinced him it wouldn't accomplish anything. Instead, he took Prue's number out of his phone and blocked her, which honestly felt like a small but satisfying victory. I haven't responded to her text, and I don't plan to. I refuse to engage in a conversation where my parenting choices and my daughter's personality are called into question by someone who clearly doesn't respect either of us. On a slightly brighter note, my sister, the one who warned me about the party, told me she had learned more about what went on behind the scenes. Apparently, Prue didn't tell anyone she was planning this birthday party until the day before it happened. My father, who had been under the impression that we were just coming over for a casual family dinner, came home that evening to find Pink decorations everywhere. According to my sister, he wasn't thrilled about it either but chose to let Prue do her thing because he didn't want to upset her. This is a pattern I've noticed with my father over the years. He tends to avoid conflict and lets Prue take the lead, even when it's clear she's in the wrong. I love my father, but his unwillingness to stand up to her is exhausting and, frankly, disappointing. My sister also told me that while my father is upset about how everything turned out, he doesn't entirely agree with Prue either. He admitted to my sister that he thinks Prue went overboard with the decorations and should have run the idea by me first. It's frustrating because, on some level, he knows she crossed a line, yet he still chose to defend her to me instead of acknowledging the issue. It feels like he's more concerned about keeping the peace with Prue than standing up for his own granddaughter. Update 2. So, as it turns out, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than I initially realized. Last night, my sister, the one who still lives at home with my dad and Prue, called me with some pretty shocking news. She had overheard a massive argument between my dad and Prue about the whole pink birthday party fiasco, and it shed light on some things I hadn't known before. Apparently, the argument started shortly after I refused to attend the party. My dad confronted Prue, asking why she hadn't consulted me about the decorations or run the idea by me beforehand. He pointed out that the whole thing had clearly backfired and said he was tired of the tension it caused. That alone would have been surprising enough. My dad rarely calls Prue out on anything, but my sister said it didn't stop there. Prue, instead of admitting any fault, turned the whole thing around and accused me of excluding her from my kids' lives. According to my sister, Prue has apparently been feeling like an outsider when it comes to my family. She's convinced herself that I don't see her as a real grandmother figure to my kids and that I'm deliberately keeping her at arm's length. She framed the party as her way of proving she could be a fun, involved grandmother and show me that she deserves a bigger role in Cleo and my son's lives. My sister said that Prue kept going on about how much effort she put into planning everything and how unfair it was that I didn't appreciate her gesture. Here's the kicker, though, and it's a big one. My sister told me that during the argument, Prue admitted that she knew Cleo hated pink. She outright said she did it on purpose because she wanted to push Cleo out of her comfort zone. My sister said she overheard Prue telling my dad that Cleo's dislike of pink was just a phase, and that it was her job as a grandmother figure to help Cleo embrace things she might not normally choose for herself. Hearing that made my blood boil. It wasn't just ignorance or thoughtlessness, it was deliberate. Prue actively chose to ignore Cleo's boundaries and preferences, all because she wanted to impose her own ideas of femininity and control onto my 5-year-old daughter. My dad, to his credit, didn't let it slide. My sister said he called Prue out for disregarding Cleo's feelings and told her that she was completely out of line. That's when things apparently escalated. Prue got super defensive and accused my dad of not standing up for her. She claimed that he always sides with me and never has her back when it comes to family matters. The argument got so heated that Prue ended up storming out of the house. My sister said she hasn't been back since, and my dad has been in a foul mood ever since the fight. The next morning, my dad called me. At first, I thought he was going to berate me again for skipping the party, but to my surprise, he apologized. He admitted that he should have stepped in sooner to stop Prue and that he had been wrong to defend her actions. He said that after reflecting on everything, he's starting to think that Prue's obsession with pink and femininity isn't really about Cleo at all, it's about Prue and her own issues. He didn't go into detail about what he meant by that, but it made me wonder if there's some deeper insecurity or baggage on Prue's end that's driving her behavior. While I appreciated my dad's apology, I told him that the damage had already been done. I made it clear that if Prue can't respect Cleo's boundaries and preferences, then she doesn't need to be around her. I told him that I've spent years trying to set clear boundaries with Prue, only to have her ignore them every single time. It's not just about pink or parties, it's about respect. Cleo is a person with her own likes, dislikes, and feelings, and if Prue can't honor that, then she has no business being a part of Cleo's life. My dad said he understood, but I could tell he was torn. He's clearly frustrated with Prue, but he's also not the type of person to handle conflict well, especially when it involves someone he's in a relationship with. After the call, I couldn't stop thinking about how many layers this whole situation seems to have. On the surface, it looks like a silly disagreement about a party and a color, but underneath, it's so much more than that. It's about control, boundaries, and respect, or the lack thereof. Prue has consistently shown that she prioritizes her own preferences and beliefs over what's actually best for Cleo. Whether it's trying to nurture Cleo's femininity or push her out of her comfort zone, it all boils down to the same thing. Prue believes she knows better than Cleo or me about what's right for my daughter. I've been reflecting a lot on why this situation has bothered me so much. I think it's because, as a parent, my number one priority is making sure my kids feel safe, loved, and respected for who they are. Cleo doesn't need someone like Prue telling her that her feelings don't matter or that she needs to change who she is to fit someone else's idea of what a girl should be. The world is already full of people who will try to put her into a box. My job is to make sure she knows she never has to stay in one. For now, things are still awkward and unresolved. My dad seems to be caught in the middle, trying to keep the peace while also grappling with his own frustrations with Prue. My sister said Prue hasn't spoken to my dad since their fight, and she's not sure what's going to happen next. As for me, I'm staying firm in my boundaries. I've told my dad that Prue needs to apologize, not just to me but to Cleo, if she ever wants to rebuild any kind of relationship with us. Until then, I'm keeping my distance. Update 3. Okay, so this will hopefully be my final update. After spending a lot of time reflecting on the situation, and reading all the advice and insights people shared, I decided it was time to sit down with my dad and Prue to hash things out once and for all. Avoiding the issue wasn't going to make it go away, and I realized that if we were going to have any kind of healthy relationship moving forward, we needed to address the underlying problems directly. My main goal going into the conversation was to make it abundantly clear that my priority is Cleo and her comfort, not anyone else's feelings, opinions, or attempts to impose their will on her. I arranged the meeting for a Saturday afternoon at my dad's house. My husband stayed home with the kids so I could focus entirely on the conversation without distractions. I went into it feeling equal parts nervous and resolute. I was determined to stay calm and firm, no matter how things unfolded. When I got there, it was obvious that Prue was already on edge. She barely made eye contact with me and sat with her arms crossed, looking defensive. My dad, on the other hand, seemed more relaxed, though I could tell he was bracing himself for what he probably expected to be a tense discussion. I started by laying everything out as clearly as I could. I explained that this wasn't about the pink party alone but about a larger pattern of behavior. I told them that Cleo's happiness and autonomy are my top priorities, and I would not tolerate anyone, family or not, disregarding her boundaries or trying to change her personality to fit their own preferences. Prue's defensiveness kicked in almost immediately. She said she wasn't trying to hurt Cleo and insisted that the party was just her way of opening Cleo's mind to new things. She framed it as a harmless attempt to expose Cleo to a different perspective, as though that justified everything. But when I brought up the argument my sister had overheard, the part where Prue admitted to deliberately choosing pink decorations to push Cleo out of her comfort zone, she went silent. I think she realized, in that moment, that there was no way to spin what she had done into something positive or well-meaning. To my surprise, my dad stepped in to back me up. He told Prue that her actions were out of line and that it wasn't okay for her to push her own preferences onto Cleo, especially knowing how strongly Cleo feels about pink. He pointed out that this wasn't the first time she had ignored Cleo's feelings, and he admitted that he should have intervened sooner instead of letting things escalate. Hearing my dad take my side so directly was both surprising and validating. For the first time, it felt like he was truly understanding where I was coming from. Eventually, the conversation shifted. Prue's defensiveness gave way to something else, frustration, sadness, and maybe even regret. She broke down and admitted that her actions were rooted in her own upbringing. She grew up in a strict household where girly things were not just encouraged but outright expected. She was pushed into wearing dresses, playing with dolls, and conforming to a very specific idea of femininity. She hated it but never felt like she had the freedom to express herself or explore other interests. In her mind, she was trying to give Cleo what she never had by encouraging her to embrace traditionally feminine things. While I empathized with her struggles, I couldn't let her use them as an excuse for disregarding Cleo's boundaries. I told her that I understood how difficult her childhood must have been, but Cleo's happiness and autonomy have to come first. I reminded her that Cleo is not her second chance to rewrite her own childhood. Cleo is her own person, with her own likes, dislikes, and personality, and she deserves to be respected for who she is, not molded into someone else's idea of who she should be. By the end of the conversation, things felt less tense. Prue apologized for how she had handled the party and admitted that she hadn't been thinking about how it would affect Cleo. While I'm still cautious about her sincerity, it felt like a small step in the right direction. My dad also apologized again, both for his role in the situation and for not stepping in earlier to set boundaries with Prue. He said he wanted to make things right and suggested that he and Cleo plan a special outing together to make up for everything. When I told Cleo about the idea later, she was absolutely thrilled. She and my dad are now planning a trip to the zoo next weekend, and she's already talking about all the animals she wants to see. As for Prue, I'm cautiously optimistic. A few days after our sit-down, she sent Cleo a small gift, a green dinosaur puzzle. Green is Cleo's favorite color, and dinosaurs are one of her biggest obsessions, so it was a thoughtful choice that actually felt like it was about Cleo and not about Prue's own agenda. It's not much, but it's a step in the right direction. For now, I'm keeping my expectations low and focusing on maintaining firm boundaries. I made it very clear to Prue and my dad that if this kind of behavior happens again, there won't be any more chances. My responsibility is to protect my daughter's happiness, and I'm prepared to draw hard lines if necessary. Overall, I'm cautiously hopeful about where things stand. My dad seems to have a better understanding of why this was such a big deal, and Prue, while still a work in progress, seems to be making an effort to respect Cleo's boundaries. Time will tell if the changes stick, but for now, I'm focusing on the positive. Cleo is happy, and that's what matters most. She's excited about her upcoming zoo trip with her grandpa, and her joy is a reminder of why it's so important to stand up for her and protect her individuality. Thank you to everyone who shared advice, support, and insights. You helped me navigate a really tricky situation, and I'm grateful for it.